everyone. Welcome to the Olympic Mindset, Resilience in Action. We are live on LinkedIn, and I'm hoping that I can see the comments in the chat. If you have any questions about this topic or for Caryn, then please put them in the chat. I will be reading them, and I'm going to try to post, I'm going to try to just pull some of the comments and the questions out and enter them into our conversation. And this is really going to be just an open conversation that I want to have with Caryn. I know that you guys have really asked for us to talk about the topic of resilience, and particularly because a large part of my audience is going through a job or career transition, and it can feel defeating at times, so I want to be able to shed some light on that. And I thought, what better person to shed some light on that than Caryn? I really want to quickly introduce Caryn and just tell you a little bit about who this person is that is on the screen with us today. So there is nothing quite like being an Olympic athlete and then meeting another Olympic athlete that makes you feel like you've underachieved in your career. Most of the time I'm like, I'm pretty proud of what I've done, both athletically and in my business career. But then I meet Caryn and I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay. Degrees, BAs from Harvard University, Columbia Law School, and the University of Oxford for her MBA. I mean, it's just crazy. And now she owns her own legal practice. And then let's take a look at her major accomplishments. So 2023 Thomas Keller medalist, by the way, the only American ever, right, to get that award. That's pretty insane. 3 world records, 3 Olympic medals, 2 gold and a silver, 4 world championships. And what does that last slide say? I can't really see it because it's, I think it's like 8 World Cup, right?
Yep.
So Caryn, just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your career, where it started, where it's at now, and a little bit about your law practice. And let's get into the topic of resilience after that.
There's nothing like having friends introduce me, because it's so easy to forget. And I'm sure everyone listening has so many successes in their life that just don't come to mind when you're really struggling, right? So I guess I want to start out by saying, like, one part of resilience is actually to remember that there's a lot you've done right, even when things go wrong. I started rowing. I got recruited in the supermarket at the age of 12 because I was a very tall and very awkward young woman.
Which, by the way, real quick, I want to say that, along with feeling like I've underachieved in my career, and now I feel like I've underachieved because I'm shorter than you.
Yeah.
Which is really hard for a 6'2" female to say, because I'm 6'2", which you can't see on camera, but Caryn, you're like 6'4".
Yeah.
The average 6'3" as women on this live.
And I love walking around town with you, Erin, because it just makes me like stand up straighter and feel so much more proud. And what I was going to say about getting recruited is I was an awkward kid, right? And there wasn't a lot of places where I felt like I fit in. And then this coach said, "Hey, come on down to the boathouse, give it a try." And for those of you who don't know, a lot of people who row are very tall. So I got to the boathouse and I was like, these are my people. Oh my goodness. This is where I fit in. So I started doing it. I was quite good at it. I was a natural, again, being so tall. And it became this virtuous cycle where I did it. I was good at it. So then I liked it more. So I did it more. And ultimately, it was a place where I belonged. And that's how I still feel. And that's what I still love about my sport is you can do it throughout your life and find community anywhere you go just by going down to the boathouse.
I love it. So tell us, kind of start us from the beginning. You were recruited and you rowed in college at Harvard. And then tell us what happened after that.
Yeah, rowed in college. We were just before we went live here, we were talking about our biggest regrets as athletes, like what we would have done differently. And I had caused to think about that recently because we're having a reunion of our, college crews all years, but I'm going to get to see a lot of my old teammates. And I was thinking about my college career. And so I was training for the national team at the same time I was rowing for Harvard. So I would do the national team in the summers and Harvard during the year. And I was just really focused on getting as fast as I could be. So much so that I didn't really think about what it was like for other people. And obviously I was kind of a shoe-in for the varsity 8, right? Because I was like Olympic level in college. And it never occurred to me to like, not that it didn't occur, it never occurred to me like, what would it be like to ask someone who was struggling just to make any boat, let alone the first varsity boat, like, hey, like, what's going on with you? How can I support you? And thank God it's really never too late. Like it's later than you think, but it's never too late. I actually sat down a few weeks ago with one of my teammates who there was a year that she didn't get voted. And I said, just what was that like for you? Tell me about it. She goes, man, thanks for asking. Here it is 20 years later. And she is just so excited that I've asked her, like, tell me more about you. We had a great conversation and she said, I felt like you were supportive of me. And I was surprised, but also I realized that like just that was the team atmosphere. Like we kind of lifted each other up. And I think that's really what led to, we won a national championship in 2003, my junior year. So yeah, graduated, actually took a year off after 2003, after my junior year, took a year off, went to the Olympic Games in Athens, where my teammates and I won a silver medal in the women's 8 rowing, obviously. Graduated from college, went full-time at the Olympic Training Center in New Jersey for 2008. I was there for a few years leading up to 2008. We won a gold medal in the 8. And then I went to law school and took a year off of law school for 2012, where we defended our title, our gold medal.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So I want to skip forward, like way forward, and then I'll go back. But you and I talked about this moment where you came back to rowing after having taken a long period of time off. What was that like emotionally for you? So I want you to like set the timeline on that decision to go back and tell us what prompted you to decide to go back to rowing.
Yeah, I was, so I retired after 2012 and became a lawyer. I was working at a big law firm in Boston, here in Boston. And I just felt like there was something missing. And I remember the day it kind of really came to a head for me. I was actually at my dad's retirement party. He worked as a professor at Cornell for 47 years. And at his party, there were former students of his who flew in from around the globe to attend this retirement party. And there was an open mic, and one by one, people got up and told stories about how my dad had changed their lives, had helped them. And I started thinking about my own retirement party. And I was like, man, if I keep going on the track I'm going on, this isn't gonna be how my retirement party looks. I might have clients come and say I made them a lot of money, but nobody's gonna say you changed my life because you cared. So then I got to thinking, all right, like what is unique about me? Like what is my contribution? And I kept coming back to rowing. And I thought, well, I'm pushing 40, but I could maybe still be fast enough. And I had learned already that my best contribution to the team, and this is a whole nother story, but my best contribution as an athlete is helping other athletes have their best performance. That's why I was a good teammate and leader. But I was like, I feel like I only just scratched the surface of that, and I want to kind of go deeper and go back to the training center with the benefit of 7 years of life experience. And I just want to be this real mentor to some of these younger athletes who are just starting out. That was what I envisioned for myself in 2019, 2020.
Okay. So going back to that moment where you decided, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to make this big comeback. And if anyone could do it, you could do it. But there had to have been those moments of doubt when you went back. Were there ever those moments where you were like, is this going to be able to happen? Or was that not even the first thing that was on your mind? Was it accomplishing something else? It wasn't even necessarily about the Olympic team. I mean, talk to me a little bit about the true why.
Yeah. I before, so I was, quitting my job, right? Like uprooting my life. I moved across state lines for this. And so before I quit my job, I thought long and hard, like, what if this doesn't work out? Like, how am I going to feel? What am I going to do? And I thought, all right, I don't have control over whether or not I make the Olympic team again and whether or not I win another gold medal. Like, I obviously can do things to make that more likely, but ultimately that is not within my control. And I want this experience to be worth it. I want it to be worth giving up a 6-figure job, whether or not I make the team. So I thought really carefully about my goals. And like I just said, my goal was to be the best teammate that I could be. Like, this is my real contribution here. And I knew that was possible, no matter how fast I was, right? Like, thinking back to my college teammates, some of my best teammates were in were in the top boat. And then I also, kind of along the same lines, I wanted to learn something new. I've been in rowing for over 20 years, but there's always something new to learn. Like, I feel like the longer you are in a field, the more you realize how much you don't know and how many different ways there are to do it. So I really just wanted to learn something.
Okay. So was there a point in this process where you thought, I don't know if this is going to happen, like achieving another fourth Olympic team? I don't know if this is going to happen. Was there ever that moment?
Like all the time.
Okay.
So let me set the stage for you. I packed my car. I drove down to New Jersey, got there, showed up at practice my first day, and like I said, I had this image of myself as like, this matriarch coming home, and, showed up. I was like, hey guys, nobody welcomed me. I just got this.
I was gonna say, like, I felt that way. I felt that way when I showed up, because I was a dual sport athlete, right? So I had made an Olympic team on the track, and then I thought, well, shoot, why not just make it in one sport? Let's go make it in another sport. And so, like, confident me just showed up right at USA Volleyball and was like, hey, I'm here. And I expected everybody to be like, oh, hi, Erin. And it was kind of like, who are you and what are you doing here?
Yeah.
It felt very different from what I had visualized. Right. So I'm curious to hear how it felt when you walked in after like years of not being there, and then the teammates are like, okay.
Yeah, and that's a huge hit to your confidence when you don't feel welcome, right?
Right.
And in the past, the way I had made myself, like, integrated myself into a team was just to work hard, like to just prove myself. I was like, all right, I just need to prove myself. I just need to get faster. And so I kind of put my head down and got to work. I started going, obviously this is months went by and I got a lot faster. And And I thought like, okay, now, things should be great, but it wasn't like I didn't really have friends. I just kind of felt like an outsider. And then COVID happened, right? Like I was going fast. It was actually looking like I was probably going to make the team, but I wasn't happy. What am I doing here? And then COVID happened, and the Olympic Games got postponed for a year. And I was like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this for another year. Like I don't think I have it in me. I'm not having fun. I don't know what I've learned here, other than that I don't belong. And I can't be a good teammate if I'm not accepted. Like, I can try to be supportive, but like if people don't want your support, like then it's not very helpful, right? So I was very close to quitting at this was like March of 2020, and again thought long and hard. Got a lot of support from friends and family in making this decision, and eventually I realized, I get a do-over. Like obviously something I did in the last year isn't working, and now I get another chance to fix it. Like I can still accomplish my goals here, and I have time. So that summer of 2020, like the team had disbanded. We were all training on our own, no contact, whatever. So, I was in my garage on the rowing machine kind of thing. And I called that summer, I called every woman in the training group. There were about 25 people. And I asked her one question. I said, what can I do to be a better teammate to you?
Oh, I love that.
And one of them started crying. She was like, no one's ever asked me that before. Because I realized I needed help in turning things around, and like clearly there was something I wasn't seeing. So just, all right, I'm going to go right to the source. Man, those were some rough conversations. I could only manage about 3 a week. One teammate who had been around a long time, so I'd known her she said to me, Caryn, I've known you for 15 years and I have nothing good to say about you. And furthermore, I don't think that you deserved to be in the boat in 2012 when you guys won.
Oh, wow.
Like, wow. And then when I thought of it, I was like, hang on. But you didn't answer my question. Like I get that like you don't think I'm doing a good job, but what can I do to be better? Her feedback was not very helpful. One woman who I spoke to was super helpful and just super like raw. She said, Caryn, there's a reason that we don't like you. We think that you act entitled. So you show up at training and you just act like you're going to make the team no matter what. Like you don't even have to try. And I was really surprised by that because that was not my internal monologue. My internal monologue was, holy shit, I don't belong here. I'm slow. I'm over the hill. I don't know what am I doing here? But as I said, I was just like kind of putting my head down, and not what that meant was I wasn't sharing with people what I was going through. So like when I didn't perform well, they thought that meant that I wasn't trying, right? And really it was just like, this is all I got because I'm old and tired. And I'm scared that I'm not good enough. And I'm scared that if I also, if I go as hard as I can today, then I'm going to be too tired tomorrow. And so, yeah.
It's like perception is reality, right? Yeah. And like they were perceiving something, even though that wasn't what your inner monologue was.
Right.
And sometimes when we are insecure or like not confident in ourselves, the easiest thing to do is to kind of like close up and go into our own world, which can be perceived so
as
differently.
Arrogance, right?
Right.
Yes.
Especially because, you're like the most decorated rower of all times. And so they're looking at you being like, she's a 3-time Olympic medalist. Like she's got to be like so confident in herself.
Yeah. yeah, when I realized that my guardedness, my fear came across as arrogance, and that in order to be like a real leader, I had to make myself vulnerable. I had to share with people like this is really hard for me. Like when you're pushing 40 and trying to train at the level of Olympians, like that's really hard. And like again sharing like I don't know if I belong here. Like what am I doing? So I just started opening up to people about this is what I'm going through. And the thing is when you open up to people, they tend to open up back, right? And you create that intimacy and that relationship, so that once people started sharing what they were struggling with, that's when I could step into that mentorship leader role where I was like, oh, I've been there. Like I've been there. Let me help you. Here's how I handled it. Here's my advice. Like, yeah, just I'm here with you. Which is one of the most powerful things you can say is like, me too, me too.
Yeah.
So yeah, finally, like I became accepted into that group. And things were going great. Things were going great. I was going like faster than I had even in 2012. Looking like I was going to make the team until January of 2021, and then I got injured. And I spent 3 months out of the boat, and lost a lot of, I was cross training, whatever, but I lost a lot of fitness, so that even when I got back in the boat a few months later, like I was a long shot. I pretty much knew I wasn't going to make the team. And again, like many days where I was like, why am I still here? Like I'm not going to make this team. But I kept coming back to, I returned to rowing so that I could help people. And even though this isn't going well for me, I can still be that supportive teammate that I always wanted to be. And then the day happened that I knew would come. The coach called me into his office, and he's known me for a long time. This was the coach that he'd been coaching for 20 years, and I was there for most of that. He said, I think you know what I'm going to say. Yep, I did. This is the end. I'm not going to give you any more chances. You have to go home. You're not going to make this Olympic team. But he also said something that I didn't expect. He said, a lot of these women in this training group don't yet know what it means to be an Olympian. Some of them may never know, even if they get to go to the Olympic Games. But you've shown with your actions in support of this team over these last months that you are a true Olympian. And with that, I walked out of his office. I was struggling not to cry. And I saw some of my teammates sitting by the door of the boat bay. They were stretching, getting ready for training. And I just picked up my duffel bag and I walked right by them, didn't even look at them, because I knew that if I tried to say goodbye, that I would burst into tears, and I just couldn't handle that right then. So I just walked out and I got in my car, drove away. And that woman I told you about, who had given me the really helpful feedback about why people don't like me, she told me later, she said, that day when you walked out of the boathouse and you didn't even look at us, I thought, this can't be how Caryn Davies ends her rowing career. She just walks out and she doesn't even say goodbye. But that's not really how it ended. A lot of those women in that group over the next few days sent me messages being like, hey, thank you so much. I couldn't have gotten through this year without me. You made me a better athlete. You made me a better person. I have more respect for you than anyone else that I've ever rowed with. And getting those messages, I realized that in that year, 2 years actually, that I had actually won something more important than another Olympic gold medal, and that was the trust and respect of the people around me.
It's funny how that happens, right? I mean, so I think of like two major pivotal moments in that story that you just told. Number one is showing up and then being like, yeah, no, we don't really like you that much, you know? Like a lot of people would maybe deal with that for like a little bit of time and then they'd throw in the towel. They'd be like, this is too hard, you know? But in your world, you did exactly what most Olympians, I would hope, would do, and like dug a little bit deeper and were like, okay, that didn't work. How am I going to change this? You know? Because like we tend to grit a lot, and we don't quit easily. And you dug inside of yourself and were like, okay, how am I gonna like change this and not lay down and die? Because that would be the route.
Right. And it's also about working smarter, not harder, right?
Right. Yeah, for sure. And then the other pivotal moment I kind of heard was when you got injured and you were like, I could be done now. And it's starting to look like I might not make the Olympic team, but I'm not here. That's not really like the number one reason that I'm here anymore. You know, like I'm here to make a difference.
Yeah.
So I'm going to finish this out
as
hard as I can and keep shooting for it. And if anything, I've made a difference, hopefully, in these people's lives, and I've gotten another chance at being a better teammate.
Yeah, sometimes when you think you've failed, like you haven't. You're just chasing the wrong goal.
Yeah. So I mean, like, talk about some resilience there, and seeing like this is going to be really hard. This is going to be an uphill battle, and there are days and times where I'm going to feel like I've fallen. But it's that Japanese proverb that we talked about where you were like, is she sitting down or standing up in the beginning? Because then it doesn't make sense. Anyway, that's an inside joke. But the proverb is that you just have to stand up one more time, then you fall down. And I feel like you walked out of there standing, you know, like you walked out of there having done what you set out to do, regardless of all the roadblocks and the challenges.
Yeah.
And I want to hear what that one teammate of yours that was like, nobody likes you. Did that ever change?
I don't think I'm not sure she still likes me.
I wanted you to say yes, that it changed. But there's always that one, right? There's always the one.
But you know what I realized is that like her opinion and her attitude it wasn't about me. It wasn't the only one.
Oftentimes it's not, right? Like when there are people that sometimes there are people that just are not happy. Like it doesn't matter what happens, you know? And so you have to like not take it personally.
Yeah.
And then there are those others that you can completely change, like you did when you walked out and they were like, we respect you more now.
Yeah. As far as I know, there's only one person who didn't change her mind about me.
Okay. We just let those go.
And like I said, that wasn't about me. And I've seen her since, and I think she's doing better now.
Yeah, good. So I want to talk too about this conversation over identity. And you and I talked about it a little bit before too. And we see a lot of athletes, even military people that are just really focused on their career or this one major goal that they have. And oftentimes you lose your identity in that pursuit. So I want to talk to you a little bit about that and how you stayed so grounded over the years and did not allow what you did become who you are.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly, there were moments where that happened. And it's funny because when that pursuit is going well, that feels so good to identify with it, right? Like I am like a champion, right? Like, At the same time, when it's not going so well, and I learned this early on in my career, like that's devastating.
Yeah.
My coaches in high school noticed that about me. she was like, you're so hard on yourself when you don't have a good performance. And she was like, you have to understand that you're not going to have your best performance every day. That's just not possible. And you got to have a little self-compassion. And on the bad days, like you're still a good athlete, and more to the point, you're still a good person. And actually, as a sports psychologist put it in a slightly different way years later, at a time when I was really struggling, and not in 2008 when I was not performing, and who knows, for all I knew, I wasn't going to make the Olympic team. He said, don't aim to have your best performance every day. Just aim to beat your average, because then you will improve. So that's part of, you're not identifying with the performance, you're identifying with the improvement, right?
Yeah.
I also, after this, in high school, when this coach gave me that feedback, I realized that I had kind of let a lot of my other interests in my life fall by the wayside, because I was so excited about this sport that, like I said, where I had like found my people and everything. So I was intentional throughout my career about cultivating interests outside of rowing. As an example, after 2004, after the Olympic Games, I went back to Harvard and I took a semester off of rowing to compete on the ballroom dance team. I was terrible at ballroom dancing.
I'm 6'4" ballroom dancer. I love it.
But I love dancing, and it was so much fun. And like, I went to a competition and I don't even remember what happened there. I just was so excited to be there. So that's the thing about when you have a bad performance. Sometimes the best thing to do is remember that, like, it doesn't, this is not who you are. You are so much more than this thing that you're trying to accomplish. You're, in my case now, I'm a mother. I've got friends who rely on me down at the boathouse. I've got family, whatever. And one of the moments in my career, like that was devastating at the time, and for like literally more than a decade, was painful. I finally, 20 years later, I finally realized what was going on and why I felt so much shame. In 2004 in Athens, we were favored to win the gold medal. We had set a world record in the heat. We had beaten the defending Olympic champions in the World Championships. And I felt there was a lot of pressure leading into that race. And I was only 22 years old at the time, so I was not yet sort of skilled at handling that kind of pressure. When we crossed the line, when we crossed the finish line, we won a silver medal. So we did not win the gold. I just blurted out the moment we crossed the line, "Oh, thank God it's over." And then immediately, as soon as I said that, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that, because that means I was just waiting for it to be over. And that must mean that I didn't care enough, and I didn't try hard enough. And maybe it's like basically my fault that we didn't win. And I was so ashamed. And that bothered me for so many years. Even after I had kind of come to terms with the fact that we didn't win, I still hadn't come to terms with that moment and that kind of shameful response. And then I realized, after lots of therapy and talking with people, that it wasn't that I didn't care enough. It wasn't that I wasn't trying hard enough. It was that I cared too much, and I put so much pressure on myself. And one of my teachers put it to me this way: if when you're sitting on the start line at the Olympic Games, your entire identity is on the line, if you identify with this goal and this sport and this race, if that is who you are, those stakes are way too high. You are obviously not going to have your best performance, because it's just too much pressure. There's too much tension. And it was interesting. That team of 9 women who raced in Athens. We actually had a 20-year reunion last fall, and we all went out to dinner and kind of shared. We each got to talk about. I just went around the table and I was like, "What is one thing that you regret from our time together?" And I shared the story of what I said after the race, and everybody else shared something equally as intimate and personal, and everyone cried. And it was just this group therapy session where we realized, like, we are all carrying shame, and we are all scarred about our failures. And sometimes just sharing them and have someone else going like, me too, is the most cathartic thing you can do.
Yeah. No, I love it. And to be fair, which is a little bit of a side note, of course, I haven't been on the medal stand. That's something that you've experienced that I haven't. But I hear, and I want you to tell me about this, that winning a silver medal is the most devastating spot on the podium.
I've heard that, and can confirm it was very difficult.
Because you're so close to winning.
Yeah.
That like the gold medal is exciting, right? You win, you're like the Olympic champion. Mm-hmm. And the silver medal is, the bronze medal is super exciting because you're like, I could have been 4th, but I'm on the medal stand. I'm excited. I'm proud. I'm thankful, grateful. But silver is like, ugh, I almost won. I didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the what ifs, right? So I had a really interesting experience I came home from Athens, and I used to carry my silver medal around in my pocket back at Harvard out for my senior year. And so when I would meet someone and they would, at a party or whatever, and they would say, wow, you're an Olympian, that's so cool. And I'd be like, yeah, I want to see my medal. And they would say, ooh, did you win? And
yeah. Oh my God, I hate that question. I really hate it.
And I would say, no, I got silver. And their face would fall, and oh, too bad. And I just got a little tired of that, right? So then I started saying, yeah, I did. I won a silver medal.
Yeah.
And then people would be like, that's so awesome. That's amazing. Let me see it. And what I realized was that when the reaction of like, oh, I'm sorry you didn't win.
Yeah.
That was less about whether I actually win and more about they were just responding to what they saw in me. Like I was responding without, no, I didn't win.
Yeah.
And as soon as I started radiating like, actually, this is, yes, yeah, I won a medal. That's so cool. Then they were like, yeah, that's so cool. So a lot of it has to do with just how you feel about it. And if you can reframe what feels like a failure as a win in some way, it will change how you feel about it.
I think that's so important because, when people ask me, it's like a question that I hate to be asked. Like, I know that they're going to be like, oh, you went to the Olympics. And I know the next question is going to be like, did you win a medal? Did you win the gold?
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to have to be like, no. And that's like the look on your face, right? That determines how they respond. And so what you said is so powerful because I think moving forward, if people are like, did you win? I'm going to be like, yes, I got to go to the Olympics. I got to compete, which not very many people get to do. So yes, I consider that a win.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. I mean, why should we be depressed that we didn't win a medal? I mean, fortunately, you got to go back a couple more times and got to be able to say, yes, I did win a gold medal. I am the Olympic champion. And I also have broken many world records. And so you don't have to deal with that. But I mean, yeah, I'm gonna say, yes, I did win. I got to go to the Olympics.
The other thing is, yes, I get to say, yes, I won a gold medal. But it doesn't feel the way I thought it would feel.
Oh, okay. I want to ask you about that. Like, okay, you've put your entire life, right, to a goal that's massive that only 0.0001 whatever people make it to. How does it feel? Anticlimactic?
Yeah, I mean, it feels as amazing as you would think it would feel, and that feeling lasts maybe 2 weeks. Someone once said to me, he was like, if I were you, I would never have a bad day. I would just put on my Olympic medals and I would look at myself in the mirror and be like, You are
I
so
know.
amazing. And when he said that, I was profoundly sad because I wish that that's the way it was. You spend all these years like chasing this dream, and you convince yourself that if I can just achieve this thing that I've wanted for so long and I've worked so hard for, then everything will be great. Everything will work out. Like my life is, made. But this, they call it hedonic adaptation or something like that. But you return to the baseline, like wherever you go, there you are, no matter
Yeah.
what you did before. So I found I was still the same slightly insecure person with all the same fears and, like I said, insecurities as before. I just have a medal now, so at least I get to say when someone said, "Did you win?" I get to say yes. But it bothered me for years because I was like, I spent all that time chasing this dream. Like I didn't have a job. I kind of frittered away my most important like career building years. I say that, of course, I didn't fritter it away. I did all kinds of things while I was training, but I felt like, what was it all for? And it wasn't until lately that I realized why I even did it and what was the point. And the point was going back to like the very first time I stepped into a boathouse. I kept doing it because I just loved having a team, a community of people who cared whether or not I showed up in the morning. And once I realized that, then I realized, well, I can actually find that in other places in life. And that when after I retired for the second time in 2021, that's what I focused on. And unlike the first time I retired, I don't feel that same like hole that where rowing used to be, because I realized there I could fill it with other communities.
Well, yeah, I mean, you filled it when you went back your second time around, which was arguably maybe one of your most powerful quadrennials that you trained
Yeah.
for, because so much happened personally in that quadrennial, even though you didn't make an Olympic team.
Yeah,
So,
it was. Yeah.
so looking back, what's one habit or belief that you believe that you built during this time of going through this long, successful career in rowing?
Compassion.
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 Out
Yeah.
of all the things, compassion.
Yeah. And this is, yeah, it's kind of building on all the things I've learned over the years, right? Like I talked about learning the importance of self-compassion as a young athlete who was too hard on myself and not performing well because of it. And I also talked about my regrets from college, where I didn't take the time to learn what my teammates were going through. Ultimately, like I keep coming back to like belonging in community, right? The best way to belong somewhere is to help someone else belong. And
I love that.
the way to do that is to show compassion.
Yeah.
So, and coming back to like resilience, which is the whole topic of today, showing compassion to yourself and others, I actually think is the best way to build resilience.
Yeah. I mean, they're so closely tied, right? Because if it's not about you and it's about being a blessing to others
Mm-hmm.
and making this world better when you leave it than when you came, you've
Mm-hmm.
done your job, right?
And also
And so,
understanding. Go ahead.
no, go. You go ahead.
Just understanding that there's things more important than success.
Yes, yes, and always having an identity that is not anchored on whether you get this job or whether you make that team or
Mm-hmm.
any kind of success, because that is not at the core your identity.
Yeah, you can be a good person without being successful, and ultimately, like that is the success, right? Is
Yeah.
as being a good person.
And I think one last thing that I want to talk about, because we talked about it the other day, is just controlling things that you can control, but letting go of things that you can't control.
Right.
You know? And that is like, you can become, I think, more resilient with that mindset. You know, this happened. It is what it is. It's time to move on.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next.
Yeah.
Or it didn't work. How are we going to pivot or change things the next time to get more creative, or to, you know, find a solution the next time around? Because in the past,
I talked about setting my goals when I came back in 2020, right? And how I did not specifically did not set as a goal, I want to make the Olympic team, because I knew that wasn't within my control. And then when things were not going well, you know, part of resilience is figuring out, like, how am I going to pull myself out of this place that I'm in? If your metrics are all based on things you can control, then you actually have agency in that situation. Whereas if you're focused on things you can't control, then you've given up all your power, and the only thing left to do is, you know, curl into a ball and cry.
Yeah. I mean, all you can do is the best that you can do. And that was one thing that I did love about an individual sport, because I've experienced both, right? The individual and the team. Team sports for me were a lot harder, at least in the beginning, until I figured out like how to really be a better teammate. And that's what it was all about. But it was hard because you can't control that outcome. Right? You can only control what you do. And so everything that you do has to be geared towards trying to help the team to win, but like, you can't ultimately control that outcome, you know? So, okay. One piece of advice that you would give to someone who's watching this and feels like, I'm just feeling down and out. I have hit a roadblock, regardless of what it is, whether it's looking for a job, changing their career, whether they're in their job and unhappy, whether they have a life circumstance that's really pulling them down. What is one piece of advice you would give to someone moving forward?
Reach out to someone else. And that can look a lot of different ways. When we're in pain, the default is to close in on ourselves, right? Like, I am suffering. No one else knows what I'm going through. No one else could have possibly felt this way ever before, which we know to be untrue, but still, that's the way you feel. Reach out. Now, it might be reach out to someone else going through the same thing. Then you feel like you're not alone. It could be reach out to someone who can help you. I think we forget that there are a lot of people willing to help if we just ask for help. So reach out to someone who's going through the same thing, and reach out to someone to ask for help. And then you don't feel so alone, and you might actually start to get lifted out of that place.
Loneliness is such a killer. And it's why I, with my clients, always recommend or help them to understand the importance of that personal board of directors in your career, or those champions that can champion you, that really want to support you and see you thrive. And how the people that we surround ourselves with, they can be great, or they can bring you down. It can either give you positive energy or negative energy, depending on who they are. So surround yourself with the positive energy. So unless we get, but this is a link to Caryn's website, and then also just a link to her law firm. So Caryn, tell everybody a little bit about what kind of law you specialize in or don't specialize in. How can you help people out there by using that Olympic mindset that you have?
Yeah, podium law, so named because of the Olympic podium. We help small businesses, and we also help investors essentially accomplish their goals. We do transactional work, meaning we don't do litigation. We help people with things like starting a business, like structuring it, getting investment, negotiating with their vendors and their suppliers. But ultimately, it comes down to understanding what someone's goals are and then helping them figure out the best way to get there.
Great. Awesome. It
And
has been, yeah, go ahead.
Since it's up there, there's also CarynDavies.com is my website for public speaking. I speak at mostly corporate events, sharing exactly the kinds of things that we talked about today to help people achieve their best performance.
Yeah, love it. Well, it has been such a pleasure to spend the last 51 minutes with you here, and hopefully everyone who joined was able to take away a few good nuggets and some inspiration. And, I think that the key word, like you said, is community. Making sure that you surround yourself with support, particularly during those times where you are not feeling your best, so that we can bounce back and be resilient and keep forging forward, because that's life, right? Like, no one's going to move through life without any roadblocks. So we have to understand that they're going to happen, and how are we going to be prepared to handle them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Awesome. Any final words?
Me too. I've been there, man. What if there's whatever it is that you're going through right now? There's someone out there who understands.
Yeah, I think people always think of like Olympic gold medalists, Olympic champions, Olympians as like, wow, it must feel amazing. But what you don't see, that we talked about the other day, are all of the like ups and downs and roadblocks and things that you have to go through in order to achieve greatness, achieve something that's so difficult to achieve. And so sometimes I love having these like vulnerable, open conversations so that people understand that it's not an easy road, just because you're wearing an Olympic gold medal around your neck doesn't mean that it came easy. Lots of learning lessons through the whole process. So thank you for sharing.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks for having me.
All right. And I'll see you in Boston when I'm there soon. All righty. Have a good one. And if anyone has any suggestions on any future LinkedIn Lives, please let me know. I always try to deliver on the topics that you most want to hear about. All right. Thanks, Caryn. Have a good one, everyone.